Hey guys, and welcome to this week's video. Now when you're watching this, Mental Health Awareness Week is officially over, and I had loved being a part of that week. I have loved getting to talk to a bunch of new people who are either carers for people with mental health, or people who are going through mental health, or just people who are really interested to know more about mental health, and sort of get to follow along and see how many people it affects around the world and what different organisations are out there. And it was just really interesting to be able to take part of that week and get involved and raise awareness. I went back to therapy this week. I had missed a few therapy sessions due to illness, and I was nervous to go back. When you initially go back after missing a few weeks, I think you get that nervous bubble of energy where you're like, oh my god, I have to go back and I have to go and talk about your feelings. And even when you're completely comfortable with that person, you get a bit nervous. And I was hoping for an easy therapy session, which not really easy because there is no such thing as an easy therapy session, but I didn't want an intense therapy session, and I wanted to ease myself back into therapy. And I went in and we sort of had a little catch up, see how I was doing, and then bam, came the topic self-worth. Now, for people who have watched from the beginning, you will know about my self-worth issues, but for new people, I have no self-worth whatsoever. I really do not like myself. I believe I'm worthless and lots of other horrible thoughts about myself. So I basically have no self-worth at all. So when that topic came up, an alarm bell went off in my head. I'm not gonna lie. Now in therapy I have obviously talked about self-worth before, but we hadn't really gone into deep detail of why I feel those thoughts and where they've come from and how dark and evil the thoughts I have about myself are. So I was hoping to sort of gloss over them again this time, but my therapist had a different idea. As I sort of just started to talk about self-worth, I began to notice that this wasn't going to be like any normal session. This was going to be a hard, intense therapy session that was no doubt going to leave me an emotional mess. And at the end of that therapy session, I was an emotional mess. I was mentally drained. I even came home and fell asleep because I was just exhausted from all those feelings from that session. When you have such a low opinion of yourself, before you can start to really try to work on having a better view of yourself and improving your confidence, you need to understand where those horrible low feelings come from and when they started. And of course that is going to open up a door of nasty evil thoughts that you, like me, have kept locked shut. So when we started to talk about feelings, I got quite nervous because I'm very good at verbalizing my feelings out loud. Over the years with seeing different mental health professionals, you sort of have to get good at saying your feelings out loud. And I sort of distanced myself from my own feelings about myself, if that makes sense. I can sort of say that I feel worthless about myself without sort of causing myself pain. So I was expecting it to sort of be an easy thing like that, but she gave me a worksheet and I had to have, there was like little bubbles around, and I had to write down the horrible nasty thoughts that I have about myself and why I basically don't like myself. And I had never written down my feelings before, written them down in like the deep detail why I hate myself. I have never divulged into the deep issues and sort of written them down physically on a piece of paper, the nastiest thoughts I've ever had about myself. So when she gave me this, I was a bit scared, and as I tried to write it down, I could not get my hand to write the thoughts down. No matter how much I tried, my hand just would not cooperate. And I realised that I was having a really hard time. The idea of having to physically write down my thoughts and then pass them along to my therapist and sort of open that locked door to let her in to this place where these thoughts are horrible or evil or nasty, and these thoughts that I would not wish on my worst enemy, and that I wish that no one would ever feel about themselves, but I feel about them myself. And when I finally sort of managed to get my hand to cooperate, letting her have that piece of paper, I felt so open and vulnerable and scared. I have never really let anyone in the whole way to why I feel so worthless. So obviously now I want to work on that. I have to be open and I have to be honest and I have to be willing to open that locked door. So it was hard when I looked down at that piece of paper and saw those feelings, and I couldn't distance myself from those feelings. And I got emotional. I started to cry, and it was really, really hard because I had never really let anyone in all that way and let anybody see the darkest thoughts of myself. And these are the thoughts that made me self-harm. These are the thoughts that made me want to commit suicide. These are the thoughts that I have felt about myself for years now but have never let anyone see. And to all of a sudden have that door open and to let my therapist in to get her judgment and her opinion, that was terrifying. And it really affected me. As I said, when I got back from therapy, I fell asleep because I was just mentally drained. But I was sort of expecting to sort of go back to normal, to be able to lock that door again until the next therapy session and it not have really bothered me. But I couldn't. Once that door had been swung open, those feelings were out there. And feeling those dark feelings again is really, really hard. Because I hadn't felt some of those darkest feelings since my suicide attempt, and having them thrust back into my face was really, really hard, and sort of having to fight my way through it without giving in to self-harm or without letting those feelings swallow me up. It just made life incredibly, incredibly hard. And this rest of this week, I have just been in this sort of limbo mood of being very vulnerable, being scared, and not really sure how to feel because I've never really opened that door before. I may have let a few feelings out and let people have a glimpse, but I have never had that door swung open and not been able to shut it and sort of cut myself off from those feelings. So to have those feelings out there and me to have to fight them without giving in to self-harm or any of those things that let me cope in the past, it's been really, really challenging. So I am excited and nervous to go back to therapy to sort of see if there is a way for me to control my emotions, or if now that that door is open, that it has to stay open for me to sort of be able to talk and heal about why I hate myself so much. Self-worth is always going to be a big, big issue with me, I think. I don't think I'm ever going to have the best confidence. I don't think I'm ever going to really believe fully in myself. I have grown up with these issues of self-worth, and the idea of being able to sort of retrain your brain and try to help you deal with them, it sounds like such a good idea, and to sort of help you try to reinvent those feelings and to sort of not have them as hurt you as much is such a good idea, but you have to be fully prepared. And I don't think I was mentally ready for what that entailed, because once you open that door, those feelings don't leave. Those feelings come back full force. Those feelings are horrible and are painful, and I mean, those feelings made me want to end my life. And all of a sudden I have to deal with those feelings, but I can't give in to the way that it used to help. I can't, self-harm that would take those pain away for a little while. I can't contemplate ending my life again. I can't do any of that because I've worked so hard to get away from those feelings, and to have them all sort of thrust back into my face, it was really, really hard. And I think if you're really going to deal with some issues that are a big deal, I think you have to be real mentally ready for how it's going to take over your life a little bit, and how for a while those feelings are going to win. And I've had days since therapy where depression has won. It has made me just curl up in a ball and cry, and today depression won. And as much as I hate admitting that depression wins on some days, this week has been a week full of challenges and feeling vulnerable and feeling scared and all these terrifying feelings back in my life again just seemed impossible to deal with. So if curling up, crying and just sort of ignoring the day helps, then that's what I'm gonna do. And if depression wins that day, then depression wins that day. And I think you have to be okay with that and deal with the fact that for a while you're dealing with these feelings, that depression's going to win a lot of those days. I know some people find it hard to verbalize those feelings but find it easier to write them down. So let me know, how do you sort of deal with your feelings? Can you verbalize them and talk about them easily, but then the idea of writing them down terrifies you and giving it to people? Or are you better to write them down and let other people read them than to sort of speak out loud to that person? I think it's interesting to see how we sort of deal with our feelings in different ways. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye!